Welcome to the first episode of Talking Aquatics, the new podcast of Aquatlantis, a space where we dive into the art, science, and passion behind the world of aquariums. To launch this new journey, we were joined by Mark, the Dutch aquascaper behind MJ Aquascaping, who visited Aquatlantis to create an exclusive layout in our brand new AQUASCAPE Ultra Aquarium. In this conversation, Mark shares his creative process, talks about the inspiration behind his aquascapes, and some valuable tips for anyone who loves the beauty and balance of aquascaping. Hi Mark. Let's start by a small presentation. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Mark. Full name is Mark Jan in Dutch, but just call me Mark or MJ, that's the easiest. I'm 35 and I'm from the Netherlands.
How did your journey with aquascaping begin?
It basically began because of a lack of space. So I started as a fish keeper, and when I was living in my parents' house, I had a decent sized aquarium. Well, when I moved out and I got my own studio, I also just got into a relationship and I didn't want to surprise my girlfriend hey, yeah, we're going to set up a massive tank in our small studio. So I got a tiny aquarium and I was like, what am I going to do in this small space? And that's when I discovered planted tanks and then aquascaping, and then I went down the rabbit hole of everything.
Do you remember the first aquascape you ever saw in person, or the first aquascaper who truly inspired you?
I think I remember. It's a long time ago, but when I was aquascaping for a few years, I kind of got good at it, and I participated in a contest held by Aquaflora, and it was held at their facility. So that was the first time I saw a aquascaping gallery. At the time, it was maintained by a few people, but including Felipe Oliveira. That was also the first time I met him, and he was definitely a huge inspiration for me. So that was the first time I saw a beautiful aquascaping gallery, and also the person that really inspired me.
What do you think is the biggest challenge for an aquascaper today?
The biggest challenge? Well, these days there's a lot of information available, and with this hobby, there's also a lot of different ways of doing things. So I think the biggest challenge is to not get confused by all the different approaches. So I always recommend to find somebody that you kind of connect with and use that person's method. So if you like my videos, use my approach. If you like videos from somebody else, use their approach. And don't mix it together.
Where do you find your inspiration when designing your layouts?
I want to say these days I get really inspired by the Japanese aquascapes. So I've been to Japan last year. I've seen the ADA gallery, and that level of aquascaping, that's kind of where I want to grow to, if you will. Yeah.
Is there any aquascaping style you have never tried but would love to?
I think I've tried almost every style. There's one that I'm not very good at, which is the classic iwagumi. So basically just rock formations with a just one plant. Usually that's a carpeting plant. A new style is kind of like, let's say, a modern iwagumi. Still the same rock formations, but with a more variety of plants. Still a lot of grasses and stuff like that. But that's something I would want to try.
And which one is your favorite aquascaping style?
This one right here. I guess this is sort of like a classic nature style. So a combination of wood and rocks and just a lot of plants. That's what I love.
Here's a fun question. Do you give names to your aquariums? And if so, what inspires those names?
To be honest with you, I don't really name my aquascapes. If you participate in a contest, it's kind of required because you have to enter into the contest, and they always ask you the name for the layout. And I always struggle with that. I don't know. I don't know. Some people have these amazing names like River in. I don't usually do that. No.
You had the opportunity to work with our new aquarium, AQUASCAPE Ultra. What were your first impressions of it? The design, the materials, the dimensions, and how was your experience working with this model?
So first impression was really good. I have very little negative things to say about it. Of course, the dimensions are, for aquascaping, they're perfect because we always want a tank that's more wide than, has a footprint that's very wide and not super tall. So the 64 by 50, for aquascaping is perfect. It's a very big tank, which is very nice. I'm usually more in, usually I scape a lot of nano tanks. So to be able to scape something like this was a great opportunity. And what I actually really love personally is the cabinet. In my home, in my studio, I use a lot of wooden elements as well. So I love how flush the cabinet looks.
Thank you. That's great to hear. Let's talk about the layout you created in this aquarium. What was your concept for the design? Tell us about your choice of plants and how you compose the different elements within the scape.
So the concept for this was basically to create something low maintenance. We're at Aquatlantis. I'm guessing you guys don't have a full-time maintenance person. It's probably going to be something that somebody is going to do in extra time. So I wanted to make sure that maintaining this aquarium would be very easy and not very time consuming. So I created a relatively simple layout. We used 3 pieces of wood and a variety of cereal stones. But most of the plants in here are not super fast growing and they will not require a lot of trimming. So it might take a little bit longer for it to develop because we're not using any fast growing plants. But I think overall it should be relatively easy to maintain.
During your visit, you also got to explore the Aquatlantis facilities. What did you think of the company? And was there a specific area or department that caught your attention?
Yeah, so I've never been to an aquarium manufacturer. This was my first time. And I think the most impressive thing for me was the automated glass cutting and just how smooth that process was and how easy it was for the guys to cut it, basically. I mean, the machine cuts it, but then you still have to break the line or the cut. And just like how fast they did it and how smooth it went, that was really impressive. But overall, the entire facility, it was just cool to get a behind-the-scenes look of how aquariums are made because we buy it in the shop and we don't see what happened before that.
What is the best piece of advice you've received about aquascaping and what's the worst?
I think the best piece of advice is to use a lot of plants because when I started, I always just bought just a few plants because I thought, the plants will grow and then over time I will just have more. But if you start with just a few plants, it's very difficult to get a balanced ecosystem. You're just going to get more, you have more chance of getting algae. That's what I very, very much struggled with in the beginning. And the worst piece of advice, I have to think about that one. I think the worst piece of advice was maybe, not necessarily the worst, but it's just an approach that I don't really stand behind myself, is that liquid fertilizer cannot cause algae. I see it differently. I rather have not so many nutrients in the water column and more nutrients in the substrate. So if you do have algae, they don't have access to abundance of nutrients.
And when someone creates the first aquascape, what should they expect in that process?
First of all, it's a learning process. I don't want to say that this is a complicated hobby, but it's not something that you can learn in one day and then, you're done. It definitely takes some time to learn plants, to learn about algae as well. And you can, like every aquarium will get some algae in the first few weeks. That's just the normal procedure. So my advice would be, like, if you do start to see some algae in the beginning, just don't freak out and just kind of let the aquascape go through its startup phase and don't make too many changes.
For someone who is starting, what's the must-have tool every aquascaper should have?
The must-have tool?
Yeah.
Well, not to sound too philosophical, but the must-have tool is probably to have patience. But if we're talking about physical tools, I would say a paintbrush. I think a paintbrush is the must-have tool for aquascaping.
For the substrate.
The substrate, yeah.
What is the safest plant to begin with when setting up a planted aquarium?
The safest plant to begin with?
Yeah.
I would say a fast-growing plant. Any sort of like easy category fast-growing plant. Let's say if you have to pick one, I'm going to say Limnophila sessiliflora.
Okay.
It's a very fast-growing plant, which, like you can even grow it without CO2, without very strong light. So if that's your first plant, choose that one, and then you can trim it, you can multiply it, and then afterwards you can add more.
When maintaining an aquascape, do you recommend a specific order of tasks to keep everything balanced?
So when I maintain an aquascape, I usually start by just slightly lowering the water level, because one of the first jobs is usually to clean the glass. And we have open top tanks. So if the aquascape is completely full and you're going to start cleaning the glass, you'll probably spill some water. So I always start by kind of like lowering the water level to a certain percentage. Then I clean the glass. And if necessary, the next step will be trimming. After trimming, we can do the full water change. So I usually do a 50% water change, then fill it back up, and then add fertilizers or any other water treatments if necessary. But basically, it's really simple. Drain a small amount of water, clean the glass, then do your trimmings, then do the full water change, fill it back up, and that's it.
So, from your experience, what's the best way to fertilize an aquascape?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I prefer to have a lot of nutrients in the substrate. So in this aquascape, we've used a lot of aqua soil. So that will provide the plants with plenty of nutrients, especially during the first few weeks. If this was my own aquascape, I'll probably even add more nutrients with root taps, like a Seachem Floris tap, for example. And at home, I usually don't start fertilizing until the aquascape is like 4 weeks old or 5 weeks old, something like that, because the nutrients in the substrate is enough to provide them for those early weeks. And then after that, I like to just start with a very, very minimal amount of liquid fertilizer. And I like to keep it really simple. I just use an all-in-one. For example, the Seachem Floris pretty much has the majority of the nutrients that the plants need. And I also like to rely on the inhabitants of the aquarium to provide nutrients as well. Like, we're going to add fish, we're going to add some other inhabitants. They'll produce waste, and the waste is food for the plants.
Do you have any personal secrets or tricks when working on your tanks?
No, I don't keep secrets.
No,
I have a YouTube channel. My goal is to get more people into the hobby, so I don't keep secrets for anybody. I'm an open book.
And what's the biggest myth about aquascaping that you would like to clear up?
Maybe, I'm not sure if it's a myth, but a lot of people think that in order to have a beautiful aquascape, you need to use CO2. CO2 will definitely help, but in my opinion, it's not 100% necessary. You just have to be a little bit more mindful about the plants that you choose. So I'll say that's a myth. Yep.
Are there any books, films, or other materials that you would recommend to people who want to learn more about aquascaping?
Yeah, if people want to learn more about aquascaping, I have a YouTube channel. No, I'm joking. I think ADA makes a lot of books, like step-by-step guides. They have these little, usually they're free as well. It's like a layout, a step-by-step layout guide. So they'll show you the finished result and then all the necessary steps to make it, including maintenance as well. So I think in terms of books, ADA does a really good job.
This year, you participated for the first time in the IAPLC, one of the world's biggest aquascaping contests. How did that feel? What was the most challenging part of the process?
Yeah, so I usually don't participate in contests because it's quite difficult to combine it with content creation. This year was the first time, and I have to say I really enjoyed it. When you know that somebody else is going to be judging your work, you put a lot more effort into it. It was not difficult, but in general, in a layout for a contest just requires a bit more work in terms of maintenance, but also in terms of planning, because you're working towards a deadline. So you need to make sure that when you take the final picture, the tank is looking pristine. And that requires planning. I travel quite a bit, so that was probably the most challenging part. Yeah.
From your perspective, which was the best layout in the competition this year?
The best layout in the competition?
Yeah.
I don't know the exact number. It was in the top 50 for sure. It was a layout with basically 2 massive rocks, and just the sense of scale was really impressive to me. I'll make sure to find the exact number and so you can overlay it. But there was 2 really big rocks, kind of like a canyon in the center, and it was something that I've never seen before.
Do you believe that technological equipment is essential to succeed in aquascaping? So iTech is essential?
So equipment is important in a way, but I guess it all depends on your personal goals. If you want to participate in the contest, probably yes. It's very difficult to make a beautiful contest tank with a low tech setup. But yeah, if you enjoy a simple aquascape, you don't necessarily need very fancy equipment, and you can just do it with a simple light, a filter, and that's it. I've done some really, really nice aquascapes with very simple equipment. Yeah, it just depends on your personal goals.
How many tanks do you have at home?
I think at home, I live in an apartment. It's 2 floors, and downstairs in the living area, I have my main aquarium, which is 120 centimeters, and I have a small saltwater aquarium. And on the second floor, I have my aquascaping studio, and I think there I have 10. So I want to say 12 tanks in total.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much time per week do you dedicate to maintenance?
So I like to do most of my maintenance on a Saturday morning. During the week, I just work like a normal person. But on Saturday, I just like to start the day very chill with a coffee and just do the cleaning, the water changes, the trimming. So let's say like a full Saturday morning, 6-7 hours, which seems like a lot, but again, I have 12 tanks. So let's say 7 hours in total per week.
Okay, it's done. Thank you, Mark.
Good.